Welcome to our YouTube channel, where we offer actual experiences about infidelity. Today's article is titled, I Kissed My Stepmom While She Was Sleeping. It's quiet tonight, like it's waiting for something. I'm sitting in the dark light of the living room, simply staring at her. I definitely shouldn't be, but I can't seem to stop myself. My stepmother's name is Ava. I should start by telling you who I am. My name is Ryan, and I'm 23. I just finished college and came back home to figure things out to start living my life. But lately, all I've been doing is thinking about her. It's strange. When I was younger, I never really thought about her in this way. She was just Dad's wife, someone who came into our lives when I was in my teens. She wasn't my mother, and she never tried to be. She was just there. But now things are different. I suppose it started when I came home from college for the summer. I walked into the house expecting everything to be the same quiet routine. And for the most part it was. But when I saw her, something in me shifted. The way she looked, the way she carried herself. It wasn't just a woman who'd been living with us for years. There was something deeper there, something I couldn't ignore. But tonight, as I sit here, I can't help but focus on something else, something even more unsettling. She's asleep in the bedroom, the door slightly ajar. The faint light from the hallway filters in, casting a soft glow over her. She looks peaceful, so calm, almost innocent as she lies there. I know I should let her be. She's my stepmother. After all, we've never crossed any borders, and there has never been anything between us. Not like this. Not till today. But tonight is different. Tonight, I feel a draw toward her. Perhaps it's the serenity, the way she seems tranquil and unaffected by the world. Perhaps it's because I've begun to perceive her as a woman rather than simply a parent. I'm not sure how that occurred. It wasn't anything I planned or even desired, yet here I am, stuck in the calm strain of my own mind. I have never informed anybody about this. Hell, I've barely admitted it to myself. I sit here, torn between the man I'm trying to become and the conflicting feelings I'm having for the woman who raised me. I know it's wrong. It feels wrong. But there's a part of me that can't stop thinking about her, about what it would be like to be closer to her than I've ever been before. My father's in bed already, and I know Ava won't wake up for hours, but I can't shake this feeling. I want to be near her, to see her in a way I never have before. I can't explain it, but tonight I can't ignore it anymore. I sit in the living room staring at the door to her room. Every few seconds I glance up at the hallway, the silence around me growing heavier with each passing moment. My heart races and I can feel the weight of the decision pressing on me. There's a part of me that says I should stay where I am, that I should leave things the way they are and forget about it. But another part of me, the part one can't silence, wants to see her, to be near her in a way that feels entirely new, entirely wrong, and yet so very tempting. I rise slowly, my legs almost trembling beneath me. As I step quietly toward the hallway, my mind is flooded with 100 thoughts. What would it mean if I went to her room? Would it change everything between us? Could I ever look at her the same way again? But the more I think about it, the stronger my desire grows. It's like an invisible force pulling me forward, compelling me to move closer. I walk down the hallway with slow, measured steps, making sure the floorboards don't creak beneath my weight. I reach her door, which is slightly ajar, just enough for me to see the faint outline of her figure, on the bed. She's still sleeping, the soft rise and fall of her chest, the only sign of life. Her face is peaceful, so calm and unguarded. There's something so beautiful about her in this moment. Something that makes my chest tighten and my thoughts cloud with longing. I stand there for a while, just watching her. The light from the hallway casts a soft glow across her face, highlighting her delicate features, the curve of her lips, the smoothness of her skin. I've seen her every day for years, but tonight in this moment she feels different. The air between us feels charged, like something is about to shift. My heart pounds in my chest. As I take a step closer, I can feel the heat of her room, the warmth wrapping around me like a soft blanket. I stand just beside her bed watching her sleep, unsure of what to do next. My hands are clammy, my breath shallow. I can't shake the feeling that this is crossing a line, but I also can't stop myself. I reach out, my fingers trembling as I gently touch the edge of her blanket. The sensation of the soft fabric beneath my fingertips sends a rush of warmth through me. It feels so wrong, but at the same time it feels so right. I pull the blanket back slightly, just enough to see the curve of her bare shoulder. She doesn't stir. The sight of her like this, so vulnerable, ignites something deep inside me. I know I should stop. I know I should walk away before this becomes something I can't undo. But as I stand there, the temptation grows stronger. I want to touch her, to feel her warmth against me, to see her in a way I've never seen her before. I glance down at her sleeping form again, my mind racing. Should I leave, or should I risk everything and let myself explore this forbidden desire that has been building inside me for so long? As the silence envelopes us, I realize there's only one thing I can do. The door is open, but it's up to me whether I step through it. I stand there frozen, my heart beating loudly in my chest. The weight of my decision feels unbearable, and yet, in that moment, it feels as if everything has led up to this very point. My mind races with 1,000 thoughts, but there's one constant. Her Ava, the woman who has been a part of my life for so long. Yet tonight, everything feels different. I watched her for a long time, her breathing slow and steady, unaware of my presence. Every inch of her was so close yet so far away. The desire, the pull to get closer to her, to cross the line that had kept us in the boundaries of our roles for so long, grew stronger with each passing second. I took a deep breath and stepped closer, my pulse quickening as I sat on the edge of the bed, just inches from her. She didn't wake up. Her face was serene, innocent, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. The temptation to touch her was overwhelming. I reached out slowly, my fingers brushing the fabric of her sheets. The softness felt like silk against my skin, but my hand faltered, trembling. This was insane. I knew it. This was a line I could never take back. If I did this, everything would change: the way I looked at her, the way we interacted, everything. But the more I resisted, the harder it became. I placed my hand gently on the edge of the bed, just barely touching the curve of her body. I could feel her warmth radiating through the blanket, a heat that matched the fire burning inside me. My fingers lingered, unable to pull away, as if they were drawn to her in ways I couldn't explain. The silence between us was deafening, and for a moment I almost wished she would wake up. I wished she could see me feel this tension building between us. But she didn't stir. Instead, she remained there, sleeping peacefully. Unaware of the storm brewing inside me, the room felt smaller now, the air thick with desire and confusion. I felt both guilty and thrilled at the same time, trapped between two worlds. One where I knew I should stop, and a no. There where I couldn't fight the pull any longer. The closer I got to her, the harder it became to hold back. I leaned in just a little closer, my breath catching in my throat as I reached out and gently tapped a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was so light, So careful, yet it felt like I'd crossed an invisible threshold. It was as if everything had changed with that one simple gesture, and now there was no going back. I felt her warmth against my fingertips, and it sent a wave of electricity through me. My heart raced even faster, and I held my breath, praying. She wouldn't wake, but she remained still, her face calm, her eyes closed, oblivious to the battle raging within me. I pulled my hand away slowly, as if afraid that touching her again would break something fragile and irreplaceable. The silence was unbearable. Now it felt like an eternity passed as I stood there, watching her, wondering what would happen if I pushed this further. But then, just as quickly, the guilt crashed over me, drowning out all other thoughts. This wasn't right. I couldn't do this. Damn, my fingers curled into fists at my sides. As I stepped back from the edge of the bed, I felt like I was betraying everything, every boundary that had kept us both safe and untouched. But the poor was still there, tugging at me. The temptation to cross that line I'd never even considered before was almost unbearable. I turned my back to her, but even that felt like a betrayal. I could still feel the heat of her presence behind me, the quiet rhythm of her breathing. It was as though every step I took away from her only deepened the ache inside me, a longing I couldn't ignore. The house felt eerily still now, like I was the only person alive in it. Along with my thoughts and the weight of my feelings, I stood in the doorway for a moment, my mind spinning, my heart in turmoil. What was I doing? Why was I even here? But the answer was clear. Because it was her. It was Ava. This woman who had been a part of my life for so long. But only now in this new light did she feel like something more. I glanced back at her one more time. The soft glow of the hallway light cast gentle shadows across her face, accentuating her delicate features. She was so beautiful, so serene, and yet I couldn't stop. Feeling this pull, this desire to know her in a way that was far beyond what I should. I stepped back into the living room, my heart still pounding in my chest. Every muscle in my body was tense, as if I'd just run a race I didn't know I was in. I sat on the couch, but the stillness of the house was no longer comforting. It felt like a pressure, an unspoken weight closing in on me. I was aware of every sound, the way my breath echoed in the quiet, the faint hum of the air conditioner, the distant rustle of leaves outside the window. Yet even in the safety of the living room, I couldn't escape thoughts of her. I closed my eyes and all I saw was her face, her soft lips, the warmth of her skin, and the quiet vulnerability she carried with her. My hands still trembled, my chest tight with a mixture of guilt and longing. I knew I should be stronger than this. I should walk away, leave things as they were. But this feeling, this overwhelming pull was too powerful to ignore. It felt as though the universe was aligning in a way that was out of my control, pushing me towards something I knew I should resist, but couldn't. The hours dragged on, but sleep didn't come. My thoughts remained consumed by her, by the memory of that moment. When I almost crossed the line, the sound of her soft breathing haunted me, as if it was calling me back, pulling me toward the bedroom once again. And finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up from the couch, the decision made in the deepest corners of my mind. This time there would be no turning back. The silence had become unbearable, and I couldn't continue living with this internal battle. I walked down the hallway again, my feet moving with a sense of purpose, but my heart racing with every step. This time there was no hesitation. I approached her door, but I didn't pause. I opened it slowly, careful not to wake her. The light from the hallway spilled into the room, casting long shadows across the bed. She was still asleep, but something was different about her. This time she looked even more vulnerable, more real than she did earlier. I took a step into the room, closing the door softly behind me. The quiet hum of the night was broken only by the sound of my own breath and the pounding of my heart. I moved to the side of the bed again, unable to resist the urge to be closer to touch her. But this time I couldn't hold back the desire, the need to feel her, to see her as more than just my stepmother. Everything else paled in comparison. I stretched out cautiously, my fingers quivering, and stroked her shoulder softly. I shivered when I felt the warmth of her flesh under my fingers. She didn't wake up, but her body responded by moving slightly in her sleep. My heart quickened when I saw her in the faint light, so delicate and fragile. Race. I took a deep breath and attempted to steady myself, but it was ineffective. I moved closer, my hand sliding down her arm, tracing the curve of her body. The heat between us was undeniable, and it was all I could do to hold back the urge to touch her in ways I knew I shouldn't. I watched her face, her eyes still closed, her expression calm. It was as if she was in a dream, unaware of my presence, unaware of the storm raging inside me with every movement. Every touch, it became harder and harder to stay in the realm of the safe and familiar. The silence in the room was broken only by the sound of my own breathing, shallow and erratic. My thoughts were clouded with desire, with the need to be closer to her, to feel her beneath my hands, to cross the line that I'd spent so many years keeping intact. But as I moved closer to her, my heart heavy with conflicting emotions, I suddenly heard a noise, a faint shift in the sheets, a small sound that made my heart leap into my throat. I froze, holding my breath. Ava stirred slightly, her eyes fluttering open just a little, but she didn't fully wake. Her gaze, though unfocused, landed on me, and for a moment I felt as if everything was suspended. She blinked her eyes, trying to adjust to the dim light, and then she looked at me, confusion crossing her face. I stood there frozen, unsure of what to do. The moment felt endless, like time itself was holding its breath. Then slowly her lips parted, and in a quiet voice she said, "Ryan, what are you doing here?" I inch closer, drawn by an invisible force. Her breathing quickens ever so slightly. Her lips parted just enough to catch the soft glow of the dim light. She's not fully awake, but she isn't asleep either. She's aware of me, of this moment. I don't know if I can stop anymore. I say, my voice shaking with uncertainty. Her eyes search mine, her gaze softening just enough to make my heart race even more. The air between us feels thick with unspoken tension, the weight of our silence more telling than words could ever be. Without thinking, I lean down my hand, reaching out to gently caress her face. Her skin is warm, soft under my touch, and for a brief moment, she doesn't pull away. Her eyelids flutter again, and she lets out a soft, almost imperceptible sigh. I can't help but notice how close we are, how everything in me is screaming for something more. I pause just a breath away from her, looking at her lips, wondering if this is the moment where everything changes. My heart is pounding in my ears, and I realize that she's not stopping me, not pulling away, not telling me to leave. She's just there, vulnerable, waiting, and that makes it harder to resist. Her lips part slightly, her breathing shallow, and it's all I need to close the final distance. I press my lips to hers. The kiss is soft at first, tentative, like we're both testing the waters. Her breath catches in surprise, but then she doesn't pull away. Instead, she responds slowly, gently, almost as if she's still unsure. But the spark is there, the undeniable connection that neither of us can deny any longer. I pull back slightly, just enough to look at her, my hand still resting against her cheek. Her eyes are wide, searching mine, trying to understand what's happening. What this means, Ryan, she breathes. But she doesn't finish the sentence. Instead, she lets her eyes fall to my lips, and in that moment the decision is made. We both know what's happening. There's no going back from this. I kiss her again, this time more urgently. The tenderness is gone, replaced by a hunger that has been building for so long. She responds in kind, her hands sliding up to my shoulders, pulling me closer, urging me to move faster, to give in into this unrelenting pull between us. I pull back for a second, my breath heavy in my chest, feeling the warmth of her skin and the pounding of my heart. The kiss has left me dizzy, unsure of what to say or do next. But before I can gather my thoughts, she shifts her fingers trailing up to my neck, pulling me back towards her. There's a sudden urgency in her touch, something that makes my PSS race even faster. "Don't stop," she whispers, her voice shaky, vulnerable and almost pleading. It takes everything in me to keep my control as I lean back, down this time more confidently. I feel the way her hands slide over my body, her touch more insistent now, as if she's suddenly caught up in the same storm that's been brewing inside me. She pulls me onto the bed, and for a moment, we both freeze, the weight of what's happening between us, settling over us. But neither of us pulls away. Her hands move to the hem of my shirt, lifting it slowly as if she's testing the waters I let her. There's something about her touch, the way she's looking at me, that makes every part of me burn with desire. As my shirt is finally pulled over my head, I can see the faint tremble in her hands, but there's no hesitation in her eyes. She's all in. I lean back down, kissing her again deeper, now letting the kiss grow more intense. Her hands move down to my jeans, fumbling with the zipper. And that's when everything shifts. The reality of what's happening, of who we are to each other, crashes into me. I pull back, my breath ragged, and I look at her. "Wait. Ava," I whisper, as if saying her name will somehow bring me back to reality, to the life I thought I knew. "What are we doing?" She looks up at me, her eyes wide, but her expression soft. There's no panic, no fear in her eyes, only a quiet understanding, as if she's been waiting for this moment just as much as I have. "I don't know," she murmurs, her voice a mix of uncertainty and longing. "But I don't want it to stop." I can feel the weight of her words, the truth in them. This isn't something that's just happening because of some passing moment. This is real. And now that we've crossed this line, there's no going back. I take a deep breath, trying to slow my racing thoughts. "Are you sure?" I ask, my voice trembling. "Because once we do this, things will never be the same." Her eyes lock onto mine, steady and unwavering. "I've never been more sure of anything," she says, her voice a soft promise. "I want this. I want you." The words hang in the air between us, heavy with meaning. My mind tells me to stop, to walk away before things get even more complicated. But my body betrays me. I've already crossed this threshold, and there's no turning back. Now I kiss her deeper, this time with finality, as if to capture this moment in time. She pulls me closer, her hands going down my back, encouraging us to get closer and lose ourselves. In the heat of this yearning, her body crushes against mine, and the world outside this room melts away, leaving just the two of us entangled in this maelstrom. But just as things are beginning to spiral, there's a knock at the door. We both freeze, our bodies as tense, caught in the sudden intrusion. The silence that follows feels deafening. I look at her and I can see the panic in her eyes. For a moment, everything stands still. "Ryan." A voice calls from the other side of the door. My father's voice. My heart drops into my stomach and I feel like I've been caught in a lie that I can't escape. I quickly scramble off the bed, my heart racing. "I'll be right out, Dad," I shout, trying to mask the fear in my voice. The knock doesn't come again, but I can hear him walking away, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Ava sits up in bed, her expression a mix of shock and confusion. She's breathing heavily, her hands shaking as she pulls the covers tighter around herself. "Ryan, what just happened?" she asks, her voice barely a whisper. I look at her, my mind reeling. "I don't know," I say, my voice low, trying to steady myself. "But we have to stop." Her eyes search mine. And for a moment, I think she's going to argue, to pull me back into this dangerous, intoxicating moment. But instead, she simply nods, her lips trembling, as she slowly shifts off the bed and stands up. "I don't know what's going on between us," she says softly, her eyes avoiding mine. "But we can't let it happen again. We can't keep doing this." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I want to argue, to tell her that I can't walk away from this, that I can't pretend like nothing happened. But I know she's right. The door between us and the outside world is only a few steps away, and the consequences of everything we've done could be far worse than either of us can imagine. We'd both stand there for a long moment, the tension between us thick and painful. And just like that, the dream I've been chasing so desperately shatters. The door is open now, and what happened behind it stays there unspoken, unfinished. I turn away from her, feeling the weight of everything we've just shared, and with one final glance, I leave the room. I carefully lock the door behind me, my head racing with ideas I can't comprehend. I stroll down the corridor, feeling lost and empty, until I reach the door of my father's room. I hear the soothing sound of his voice. The seriousness of the situation strikes me again. What we've done this time is more obvious, and it can't be kept hidden long. Thank you for listening to the whole story. Don't forget to subscribe for alerts and to keep up to date on our newest videos.
Subscribe to my channel.